Okay, so we are now live. This is Avocado Sprint Release Sprint 66, which the outcome is going to be the release of Avocado version 66, and we are going to talk about the planning for the next release, which is going to be numbered right after that, so 67. This was an introduction, we have a new Avocado team member, which is Jan. Jan, would you like to introduce yourself to the community?
Hi everybody, I am Jan, and I'm from Czech Republic. I'm a student here, so I now joined to the team and start working on something on CIT plugin and something like that. So yeah, that's all about my introduction.
That's fine. So yeah, Jan is primarily working right now on the CIT plugin. There is probably a rewrite coming soon. And he was mostly the author of the first version as well. So expect updates on that area and in like contributions from Jan in other areas as well. Having said that, let's just say a few notes about this release. This release was kind of slow. A lot of the Avocado team members have been working on an avocado related initiative. There was also a cross post announcement sent last week, which is the avocado QMU work. So there is now also meetings happening every Tuesday, which are open to both communities. So most of our work was indeed focused on avocado QMU. Having said that, there are some fixes which are worth packing into a new release, and overall we had the release of new distributions which also make it worth to package newly released versions of both Avocado and Avocado VT for those platforms. So let's go ahead and take a look at what was effectively done on this release. So we had the OpenSUSE provider support enabled on VM image. So users of VM image can now also choose SUSE as a type of VM type of distro to download the distribution. There were a number of really interesting, let's put it that way, aspects of OpenSUSE naming, which Caio had to work around it and bring like a consistent experience, hopefully, to users. And there were, at the same time, a lot of improvements on the unit tests and on the VM images, on the VM image modules and functionalities. Caio, do you want to say anything about this? Anything else about this?
Just a quick comment that is actually in the pull request description. The open source versions available do not include the tumbleweed version. That's the rolling release for open source. So the versions expected to work is the 42 series and also the 15, and the next ones probably will work well too. Just Tumbleweed will not work.
Right. And by rolling releases, you mean like releases that are sent out like constantly, right?
Yes, sure.
Okay. All right. So there's OpenSUSE support in VM image. And I've mentioned this. There was also a number of pull requests, a number of commits, and I think there is a V2 of this. Yes. So V2 was the one that was actually got merged. Let me paste. There you go. Yeah. So a number of test improvements on the VM image module. And I think the most important fix that not the most important fix, because that was probably, I'm not sure if we had other fixes, but this was pretty important. We have actually users who are now relying on Python 3 executions of Avocado in kind of complex environments, including the Yamuk loader. And this is actually a must for them. So this is one of the reasons that this is a release worthy time. So Lukash, this was basically your work. Do you want to comment on the approach you took here? And the two cards are basically about the same.
Well, there is not much to say about. Basically, Python 3 requires the encoding and decoding of characters, and yeah, we didn't do that. We fixed those ages ago in the core, but not in this YAML2MOOCs plugin and some of those areas. And related to that is the bug non-ASCII characters breaks YAML2MOOCs as it was non-ASCII character, and Python 2 default handling didn't cope with that. So with those fixes and those encoding decoding parts, we actually decode all parsed YAML files into default encoding or UTF-8 when we are not able to guess the encoding. And yeah, then it's handled internally as UTF-8 as the rest of Avocado.
Cool. And I think we're almost there. I mean, all the tests that we have are now running on both environments. We don't have, so this was about a blacklist that we have for some functional tests. And right now we don't have any exception on functional tests running on Python 3. So the coverage should be more or less the same, not more or less the same, but it should be the same across Python 2 and Python 3. Still, and this is a sign with probably every Python software out there, is that unless we exercise all the code in both Python versions, we may still have issues regarding true encoding. And
But
this
by
was
the way, regarding that, have you tried CAT plugin with Python 3?
no.
Because it didn't used to work.
Right. So we have to try, and that is actually my point. Even though we have, I don't know, more than 600 tests at this point, I believe, there's still a lot of code paths that we don't exercise. And this is just one example, just to make that point, is that I had to fix some software manager code because we had essentially the same problem. So using the text versions and binary, just because this code is not exercised on Python 3 yet, we didn't find those issues. So there is a test here that hopefully will prevent this from happening with this module. But there may still be issues out there. That's the only what I'm trying to say. So yeah, we should definitely add CIT tests, CIT plugin tests, and whatever modules that we don't have tests, we should try to enable them. And that was actually also true for VM image. So VM image originally had no tests, if I remember correctly. I think Caio can say something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I added some very simple tests, and then he improved a lot on those.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, what I'm trying to say to the overall community, if somebody is watching this, is that we have a lot of tests, but still there may be modules or specific functionality which is not covered yet, unfortunately. And we're doing our best to increase the coverage and fix those issues. And one thing with regards to Python versioning is that right now, Caio merged about an hour ago a patch pull request that actually switched the default order of Python version for development purposes. So if we look at code commits, so this is where we, for development purposes, we now default to Python 3 instead of just Python, which on most systems, there's just like one abnormality that I'm aware of, which is Arch Linux, which the Python binary without a version number actually means Python 3 because they don't have Python 2 at all. But other than that, most other distros should have Python 3 as a Python 3 binary. So now we look
By
for.
the way, one question regarding that. Well, two questions. First, how about make clean? Because if I'm gonna bisect, I will start with Python 3 because new code, and somewhere in the middle of bisecting, it will switch to Python 2 unless I specify that.
In make clean.
Yeah, and make clean won't clean.
Well,
clean a different environment. So if you consider maybe adding like hard-coded Python 2 cleanup for the transition period, as we did with 32 LTS, like we had some extra cleanup steps for the purpose of bisecting. I mean, you can always force the Python version, so the Python binary. So
yeah.
maybe just for us, that we need to be aware that if we start bisecting now, we can end up in like bisecting with Python 2, Python 3, depending on which commit are we on. So maybe just
Oh, I see your
information.
point. I see your point. You mean bisecting across this commit and other commits. I see.
Yes, this
Yeah.
basically. So that I mean, I don't think it's worth adding another cleanup step to you to do the Python 2 cleanup as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that. And the second
Yeah,
question, maybe
what I try to do here is just that. So if you call
yes,
make something with Python defined, then it's gonna use that one. So
yes.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, as I said, you can always force it. And another thing. Do you think we should extend this check because somewhere I also check for Python version somewhere and some distribution don't have Python itself and they may have just Python 2. So maybe we could do which Python 3, which Python 2, which Python.
Yeah, that works. I mean, the motivation that I used here is that since we were already just looking for Python,
Yeah,
I just swapped the orders, but there may be distros out there which don't use the version number for Python 2.
I mean, look at the recent commit to Avocado VT. We had to change from Python to Python 2.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying that we may consider adding
Yeah,
this.
actually, yeah, I mean that is more related to the macro name. So it's more like an RPM macros change than the binary itself.
Okay.
I think it's not related how Python is present on Fedora 29 systems. I think so Python still is like Python as a binary is still a valid binary name on Fedora 29. Like I said
Okay.
before.
I mean, I was talking about a different distribution which doesn't have Python itself. It just has Python 2 if installed and Python 3.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure whether it's worth it. Like, do you think we should create a card for it or?
Like I said, I think the only distro out there that does that is Arch Linux, which Python does not mean Python 2. That's the only one we're oh, okay, we can actually talk about that now. So it's public.
Okay.
Yeah. So is that still the case for
Yes.
okay. So yeah, let's do that.
Okay. I mean, it's not important because we have Python 3 there.
Yeah. But yeah, we can do that. I mean, if it covers more
Okay.
than
So let me just create a card and we can discuss it later. Sorry
sure.
for interruption. I was just, looking at it.
Right. And I I see your point now. You're trying to say something without giving it away. Right, yeah. Okay, so that's it about the Python versioning. With regards to the overall release status, I have not yet sent testing status to the mailing list. And that is because I ran into a few issues. The first one was the Avocado VT, which was already fixed and merged. And the next one that I ran into was this one. So basically, it seems relatable to code that we recently merged. Interestingly enough, it passes fine on our own machine, on my own machine, but when it's running inside the RPM build environment, it fails, and I think it's easy to see because the failure it's actually outside the test itself, and it has to do with the leftover temporary directories. So I think what we need to do here is just to force the cleanup of the temporary one, and this is handled by the run script itself. So there's a custom unit test code there in which we do this kind of check. So yeah, a few minor issues, a few more can pop up. I'm hoping not, but anyway, I'll post the full testing results right after this meeting. Anything else regarding the work that was done? We probably had a few other changes which are not being tracked as cards. So the kernel download fix, which this error probably has relation to, uh, a lot of small but uh, contributions from the community to other utilities. Like we now have file lock being rewritten, reusing the common class, the common utility file lock. Let me see what else. A few fixes to, this is the release. Yeah, so a few fixes to the UI proposed by Lukash. I think that's already, yeah, that was already in the previous release. So yeah, like I said, it was a kind of slow release. And on the work in progress task, we have two Avocado VT tasks. Please allow me just to move them together. Which is spinning my review, uh, at least for this one. And I think this one which is about Avocado VT installation from forums like pip. We have briefly mentioned this for some of our users. This is a big task that I really apologize for not having time to go through, which is a really, really nice improvement to the loader, which
Is it
basically,
depending on my side? I'm not certain right now.
no, I think I have
Okay.
to review the pending changes. And basically what this means is that we can get rid of the avocado tags. So it's, in most use cases, it will be less boilerplate code. I think most of the fixes we have already merged. So I think what's left now is really the usability improvement. But anyway, I'm really hoping that on this release, we'll have more time and focus on Avocado itself rather than side projects. So that's what I'm hoping for. Does Does anyone have any comments on work in progress tasks or anything else in general? Nope.
No.
Okay, so the sprint back.
Maybe do you remember the email discussion about timeouts?
Yes, I do.
Do we have any plans with that regards, or is it in part of planning?
So yeah, one thing that I told Caio earlier is that at least this one, I tend to take a look and see how it works. I'm not sure if this is really what we want, like give 60-second timeouts to the cleanup. Um, so I do understand the user use case, but I think you have a lot more like experience with that because you mentioned that it's something that happens from time to time on the CI you maintain. So I think you know more about this than I do.
Basically, I'm not sure whether it can be fixed. I haven't seen the pull request, but I'm not certain it can be fixed just by increasing the time because
Uh-huh.
it can. I'm not certain whether it's not reused somewhere else and whether it won't create another consequences. But basically, the idea is instead of like, special handling, use the default handling even for interrupted tests, because the default handling is actually to attempt to wait for the test to finish and
Okay,
then
you
wait for it
mean
to really finish.
when you say the default handling, you mean the signal handler that raises like gets the term signal and then just raises an exception
Basically,
and then
we.
the runner waits for it to finish.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Right. But hmm,
Basically, we have two kinds of finishes. Like first one is the test reports a timeout. Sorry, or test reports status, and then we wait for the PID to finish.
right.
Uh, Or it could happen the other way around. We can just it can die first,
And
and then we wait for
that's it.
10 seconds for it to report the status because the queue is lazy and can report even after the pit is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And the other kind of end is when the process still running and the test is happy, but Avocado itself thinks that the test should be interrupted, like the timeout or Control C. In
Mm-hmm.
that case, we actually signal the test to finish, like the sig term or sig int.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately after that, without any waiting, we go to the finish like post process part, which only gives it 1 second to die or report a status, and another plus 1 second to do the other part,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty strict. Like, for example, if the post process attempts to create directory or create a big file or remove a big file, etc., it can take longer. And
Mm-hmm.
it's in such cases like 60-second timeout would be good. 60-second timeout doesn't mean that it will wait for 60 seconds, but it means that it will give it up to 60 seconds of waiting.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be a hot fix,
Mm-hmm.
but I will have to go to look at the consequences. But then we should probably consider whether the normal process shouldn't be used. Like we would just signal, okay, die, and then we would wait for it to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that would be a better solution.
Yeah, I think this change here is just something that would like make the overall behavior more lenient, and it would only affect users that have tests which behave in this way. So it feels like we would be helping some users without disturbing others. That's my impression
Mhm.
with this change. But then, like just the simple fact that we had to think about those two different situations and like look at how it's handled and the discussion that was generated makes me agree with you that we should probably reevaluate how we handle those and probably simplify those two use cases into a single more
By the
consistent
way, like thinking about it, I'm not sure how it became here. I mean, it used to be important like years ago for some reason, and I think that the reason was Control C, because in case of Control C, we want to interrupt it really quickly. And the 1 second interrupt was okay. We will wait for 1 second, and then we will send kill -9 to really interrupt it.
Yeah.
But
And
so
even
I understand
even
that
then,
part.
if the process, and this is actually common for some tests, like if the process is within an interruptible sleep, we still would have to deal with that. Like the test process would still be there.
I mean, we do handle that.
Yeah.
It won't wait just for 1 second. It will wait for 1 second, send kill -9, and then in a loop for another second or so, will attempt to kill it like again. And obviously, if it fails, it would log another message. Okay, we really failed to kill it. So don't worry, we try not to leave processes behind.
Okay, so if you guys have time before we cut out the release to maybe just like run a few tests using this change, I'll do the same. It doesn't seem to hurt much. It's not like we are always waiting 60 seconds. This is a maximum timeout. So I think this would help that one user, and then we can talk about the overall test interruption mechanism that we use.
Okay, so do we have a card about it or not?
We do not. So those
Okay,
things.
so I'll just create a card and take a look at this. Let's consider it hotfix, and then we can plan the improvement or merge of those two branches. Okay, thank you.
All right. So other than that, we have, I think that's probably the hottest topic. One other thing which I was hoping, besides the pull request from Lukash, which is tracked here, I was hoping to get this contribution reviewed. I actually did some of it, but by the number of commits and the type of changes. So this is about logical volume changes. So I needed an environment different than my own, and as super user and as everything that is required to test block devices to really go and test those changes. But yeah, I'll probably not be able to get this merged for this release, but hopefully right at the beginning of the next one. And it's interesting how things go around. It looks like this guy was the original author of the auto test functionality, which we based this library on, and he's now sending a lot of fixes, basically um, syncing new version of his work with the thing that we based off. So that's what I was working on. It's kind of work in progress, but it's not tracked here on the Trello board. Other than that, we have the sprint backlog, which was basically untouched as far as I know with regards to the previous release. This is going to become the sprint backlog for the next one, and I'm not sure if somebody wants to add anything to this, if there's any urgent new tasks that anyone feels like adding it here. If not, I think one thing that we can tell Jan, that since he's a new member of the community, is that there are a number of cards which are marked as low-hanging fruit. So, for instance, I don't even remember how to filter those, but let me. Does anybody remember the color? Let me just add.
You can click on the show menu in the top right corner.
Filter cards. Yeah, cool. And low-hanging fruit. Cool. So yeah, Jan, we have some cards which are labeled low-hanging fruit, and in theory, that's not always true, but we have done our best to categorize some uh, cards in a way that those should be really, really easy to fix. So, for instance, there is this one here, which is basically about advertise Avocado as a test tool in the Python wiki. So this should be pretty easy to do. And then add process.run support to software manager. This should still be simple, but maybe a little bit more tricky. So there are a number of cards which we have marked this way, which should be simple to start with. And yeah, those would be good candidates for you to get to know Avocado more outside of the CIT plugin spectrum. Maybe Kaio, which is the second newest member of the team, can maybe give you some hints and tips about where to start and where to get acquainted with the code. Maybe code reviews on GitHub. Anything else, Kaio, that maybe helped you to get on board quickly?
I don't know if Ian already have the Avocado set up on their machine, but the first step is to get up and running, and depends on their environment, it can be a little bit tricky. But since the system is running, I think that going to the low-hanging fruits is a good choice. And of course, to take a look on the pull requests is already opened on GitHub, and try to see what they are changing. And if you have any doubt, just ask us. Of course, probably the CIT plugin already will also give you some work to do. I don't know if you want to map those works also in the Trello board. Just put the cards there and map your work on the board.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So
maybe let me mention this for everybody. Basically, reviews are open to
anyone.
everybody.
Yeah.
It's not just for maintainers. Review is accepted from anybody. You can just say, okay, this doesn't make sense to me. I mean, why are you doing that? And it could be valid even if you think it may be like wrong, or there are sometimes obvious things that somebody focused strongly on one thing may not consider. That's why we do reviews, and even a silly question can sometimes prevent a complete disaster to be merged.
Yeah, you're dead right there. It's the whole point about like having a lot of eyeballs in the code makes it much better than code that is developed behind closed doors. That's the whole point.
Like, have you considered that a process running on a hyperthreading can like get data from that one? No, I have not.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, Jan. Hopefully we gave you some interesting ways. And if you have any issues with regards to the setup or any questions about the general uh, goal of those cards, if you choose to get one of those, or even if you see something else that you think it's broken in Avocado, you feel free to just send a pull request or create a card so that we can comment on it before you actually get to work on it. So it's pretty much like we have some procedures, but feel free to focus on whatever makes sense to you. So if something sounds trivial enough, you may just go ahead and make the change and send a pull request. If you feel that something may be broken and you want to discuss it, you can either create a card so we discuss on the next meeting, or you can send something to the mailing list and ask that as a question. You can create an issue on GitHub. So whatever that makes you more comfortable, you feel free to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I think it's time to, since we're gonna stick with the same backlog and the same work in progress, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna archive this list. We're gonna create a new one, and this is going to be work in progress 67.
Done. 67.
Oh yeah, right. And we need a release name for this one. So this, yeah, eventually we'll move this to this side. This is going to become work in progress 67. And this is also changing versions. So I think based on our round trip, I'm not gonna put Jan into the fire at this point. So I think I'll cycle back to Kyle. So Kyle, feel free to choose a release name, and you're gonna be the facilitator. And Jan, basically, we have a number of tasks here, which we are supposed to do for every release, and we have one facilitator for every sprint. So I was the facilitator for this one, so I'm supposed to run the manual test, which I'm doing right now, and a few other tasks. And one of them includes naming the release. So Kyle is doing, like I'm suggesting Kyle is doing the next one. And if on the next sprint you feel comfortable and you feel like this wouldn't affect your studies or anything, then you could volunteer to be the facilitator.
Okay.
Okay,
We'll
so
see.
um, anything else? So I
So
guess,
what are we gonna do next sprint?
yeah, you mean next sprint?
Yeah, I mean, should we go through the backlog?
Yeah, we in theory we should have done this in the previous meeting. You mean the short-term backlog?
Yeah, the sprint backlog and like go through it quickly. What are we working next?
Yeah. So that was a question that I kind of briefly made, but we can get back to that. So yeah, what I mentioned is that the sprint backlog was mostly unchanged during this last sprint. So I don't think we brought any new requirements. And if you guys feel like there is urgent or important stuff that should make into the sprint backlog, now is the time to prioritize or classify or promote or demote other tasks. So, Lukash, since you brought the topic, do you feel like there's something that deserves to be in the next sprint backlog?
No, I was just wondering whether something situation changed, whether we want to move something
Out
back
of the, yeah.
out of it, yeah, or and maybe reintroduce what's there just very briefly, if we plan on working on it, because
Yeah, so
I mentioned it. I think in previous sprint, I have a side project which takes most of my time.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's been true for like at least for the previous sprint, that has been true for uh, myself, Kayo. So that's why we kind of, like, to be completely honest, we lost a little bit of touch with the requirements of the next sprint. So this was basically the plan that we made. I would say 2 sprints ago, because it was something that we thought we should be doing for sprint 66, but time wasn't on our side, so we couldn't work on them. And I'm not sure, Kayo, do you feel like there anything on the sprint backlog that we talked about that should be moved out or something that should be moved in. The way that I see this list right now is that given that our focus is still on Avocado QEMU and working on Avocado as demand arises. So as we have new demands, we'll probably tweak this. I myself wouldn't be spending way too much time going through them. That's my
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, we should move actually everything from the backlog
ec-
and keep
ec-
there only like low-hanging fruits, bringing there from like on background time. Because I mean, it's like understandable that we have this Avocado Chemo project and other projects that are important to us at this point.
yeah.
Do I get
So
it right?
yeah. So let's do that. We should probably keep this bug and we should evaluate that.
I mean, definitely we should put all bugs there, and we
Yeah.
have actually more of them here.
Yeah. So let's do that. And I think we already discussed this, and Kaio already spent some time looking at it. So I'm inclined towards leaving this one there. Do you agree, Kaio? The pistache one?
Yes, and also because that is kind of related with Python 2 and Python 3 version, since the PyStash seems that is a dead project right now,
Yeah.
and we are looking for support Python 3 more and more. Probably it's a good idea to keep this one in the backlog because we need to change. And the first glance, the first view, the task seems simple, but since we have the HTML plugin with a lot of templates and process related to HTML plugin, it's not so simple. So we need to put some effort to migrate from PyStash for another solution for templates.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good deal. So let's leave that one and let's look for the other bugs.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
there are some bugs that were not trashed yet, like
okay, we haven't tracked them.
mine actually.
Okay. So bug avocado list V and misleading documentation. Right. So let's talk about them first. Let me just move them here. First one. Avocado list dash V is broken. And I need a has to do with adding. Oh, so I'm trying to understand what's going on. Is
Oh,
the
it's just some missing argument because it expects 4 arguments and 3 are given. It's just a bug fix. It's just a boring bug fix. Nothing
okay?
really interesting there.
Okay.
It's just that under certain conditions which are not covered by self tests, it's crashing.
Okay.
And I haven't had time to fix it, but it should be fairly simple.
Okay. So it, like you said,
So
it
yeah,
should
if you're looking forward to see how test discovery works.
that's a good thing. So and this is also, like you said, it should be fairly simple. So I'm guessing it's
Yeah,
low
it
hanging
should
fruit.
be
So let's move it there.
how it
And
works.
oh, did I? Oh, I moved the wrong one. Sorry. Anyway, let me just label those because I made a mistake. And then let's talk about this one, and I'll not move it back since we have to move it here anyway. And yes, I know where this comes from. So I got this, like Eduardo was asking a question about the mux inject and the path that we use for the injected content. It's not really obvious, and
Well, the
actually.
main problem here is that we actually say that MOOCs inject by default injects into /run, which is mentioned there in the documentation, which is a mistake. We actually wanted to do it first, but it was complicated because users can tweak the MOOCs path. That's why we said it will be injected directly into root. So yeah, it's just about like putting there the correct, like fixing the information, and ideally adding there a warning that if you want your params to be discovered by default path, use the /run magic, or at least be concerned, but be like know about it a bit.
Right. So let's just put a comment here. So the expected fix.
I think it's there.
Is it?
We should also put
Oh
there
yeah,
exit
yeah.
warning. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, so low-hanging fruit, test running core APIs.
Documentation actually.
Yeah.
Of test runner.
And mux inject. Haven't we run mux inject to the YAML to mux plugin? So just
It's not option. It's just documentation. No code changes are required.
low-hanging fruit and documentation. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so we have 4 cars that we haven't discussed. To be honest, we should have done this elsewhere, like in the previous meeting, but just for completeness purpose, let's do a quick description of them so we can label them and not leave anything behind. So this was a feature request, not really a feature request, but a comment about a user. And the use case is that, okay, I'm downloading this package, which is on a well-known location, is maintained by somebody else, and I actually want the content of that file to be used on all my tests. And we do some of that with the asset fetcher caching mechanism, but that only applies to first items that we download. So if we download an RPM, that's going to live in the cache. If we download a deb package, that's going to live in the cache. But sometimes we want to put files that are extracted from them in the cache, so we don't have to run the extraction process over and over, which for a big, like large number of tests, it can be quite a bad idea. So this was basically a mapping of that discussion, and that there should be a way to describe a file that we want to live in the cache. And maybe we don't have to describe the whole steps to get the file, but just have a hash. And with that hash, whenever we say, get me that extracted file, it could first check if it's already in the cache or not. So I don't know. It's just a use case that one of our users went through, and I think it makes sense for us to help with that. Many ideas.
So if I understand correctly, you would create another avocado command to generate that, or?
No, in theory, what I was thinking about is just like, so right now we have something like within a test, we have fetch asset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And fetch asset is usually like a location. So location file.tar.gz, something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, we could have something like put asset. So if you do this once, so I'm not even sure if this is the API that we want, but it would be helpful if when we extract something from that file, so content.data is part of file.tar.gz. And then if we do content.data, and later we do get from cache, or even the same fetch asset, and we just put a hash or the name, so content data hash or whatever. You get the idea. So what we want to do is, if we download a file from a test.
But how do you get the hash? Because if you create it yourself, you don't have the hash.
No, the idea is that the user writing this would know the hash in advance. So he would say, when you extract, and this is actually something that is related, but we don't have support yet, which is for the data files, so stuff that you get with data. We cannot yet, at this point, define the hash from those files. And that is kind of important because if you look at tests that run even if only 2 times, like 2 test methods within a single test that share the same data, we cannot guarantee that the second test is using the same pristine, unchanged version of the data. Somehow the first test could modify the data, and that would influence the second test. So it's kind of related, that we, in theory, should also allow something like this, and with a known hash. So this is the hash we know about. And then this part of this is probably a bad idea. So what I mean here is the hash would be the hash that you already know. So of course it cannot be that dynamic. In theory,
Like the problem I have with this is that like fetch asset is used to fetch something from somewhere,
yeah,
and basically you want to use it to store and get places that does not belong anywhere,
right.
like
So
anonymized data or so, if I understand it correctly.
yeah, so we already have get data that gets stuff from the test related data directories, right?
Hmm.
And we have fetch asset, we get stuff from the outside world. But there is a third use case there, which is stuff that initially you get from the outside world, but then you want to cache it across tests. So you want to populate your cache directory with that. So I'm not sure yet. Like I said before, I'm just like brainstorming on how this could be implemented. But there is a clear use case that we.
So maybe, I mean, if I understand this correctly, it seems like a complex task. Maybe would you mind changing this to RFC and create RFC fields, because this looks like connected. Like,
Mhm. Yeah, I mean it's
I
a
mean, based on
completely
this description, I don't understand the exact usage and even like the way to implement it. So it would
Yeah,
be
I
nice
think
to find that.
the Lukash idea is a good idea, but the use case in RFC and the probably implementation proposed, and we can see how this can be implemented and if we have any suggestion, because right now only a card is not clear enough for
uh,
us. The use case and implementation steps.
I mean, mini RFC, it doesn't have to be complex.
Yeah,
Just some
sure.
description of, because based on this description, I mean, every card here should self-explanation, self-explanatory, say how anybody can implement it, and I can't.
Okay,
Nice.
so RFC is put processed files back in the cache. So let me just try to expand this.
Or maybe after the meeting, because we have 4 minutes left. So
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Okay, so let me just consider this an RFC, and we can get back to it. Extracting files from RPM dev and other packages is a common test requirement. Let's think about extending Avocado utils archive. Yeah, this is actually related to the previous one. So we had a user downloading a deb file which had a kernel inside, and the way to extract deb packages, it's kind of there's one right way, which is using the deb tools, and there is the other also possible way, which is using, say, AR and tar, which is also compatible. But anyway, it would be nice if we could abstract those so that users wouldn't have to figure it out. So let me just put this on.
Utils, right? Is it? Yep.
Considering improving Python detection. So this was the one you just created, right?
Yep, we just talked about it. Basically, consider adding Python 2 as well as Python 3.
Okay, so let's consider documentation and low-hanging fruit, possibly. and merge the post-processing of interrupted and finished tests. So test runner handles the interrupted test differently than finished tests. Reported status that PID. Recently we discussed, it's probably incorrect. We should merge those. Okay, so I think
Like ideally improve the name because I
yeah,
was writing it, you know.
yeah. So I'm not sure. Maybe this is something that also deserves a description of how we're handling it and
Maybe you maybe
the
just
corner
unify
cases.
those.
Yeah, it would be nice to put a link here to the. I'm not sure if I'll find it now. So to do put link to thread. We don't have too much time. So this is certainly test runner and core APIs. And in theory, it shouldn't change. I'm not sure if we can call it refactor. I think that's enough. Okay, we have 2 minutes to spare. We can. Anything else you guys want to cover or discuss? And one thing that I would say is that probably we can move this one to the sprint backlog. I'm not sure if you guys agree, so we can decide on it and call it a day. And I think I'll move this because it has to do with the Avocado QEMU work.
And
Sure.
probably the other one, the to extract RPM and deb packages as well. Yes.
Okay, anything else?
What's the name?
Yeah, do we have a name?
No, we don't have a name yet, but I accept suggestions.
Okay.
Nope. I'm looking forward to see your favorite or your new movie.
Okay, I'm gonna see and put there after the meeting.
All right. Okay, guys. Thanks, everyone. I'll be running tests. I'll probably be bugging you guys about possibly some fixes for the release. And after that, I'll send the report to the mailing list and then the release itself, the release announcement itself. So thanks, everyone. Hope to see you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.